Hey folks, Sunsaver here. I just figured I'd do another one of these little talk kind of things, just bored, sitting here, can't sleep, and it's all these thoughts and memories going through my head. And I was like calling it deathbed confessions, because some folks in the past, excuse the lisp, but I don't have my teeth in. That's really bugging me. I don't like not being able to talk properly. I can't sing either without my teeth in, or whistle properly. I used to love to whistle a lot. No, the deathbed confessions, you can find these videos of, it's not really whistleblowers, because it's not like, they're not giving names of any people that are like actively engaged in crimes right this moment or recently or whatever. It's just the idea, that these are people that were put into positions of responsibility, not so much authority. Authority is like, what's authority like? Okay, well, Carl Sagan was an authority to me on, an authority on astronomy or whatever, astrophysics. And now we have other people that, like Leonard Susskind, I would say, is like an authority on just physics kind of in general. Or you get what I'm putting. You see where I'm going with that. Authority is opposed to just a bully trying to boss you around. That's a dictator. That's not authority. That's what gives that person the right. Of course, my family, my great uncle Thomas Jefferson, penned the Declaration of Independence. Where he said that, I guess in his opinion, or those of us who believe in the same kind of things, basically that everyone is created equal on the spiritual level. So, it's, some are born crippled, and some are born with super strength, and some are born, with a defective brain, and some are born with amazing powers, but still a defective brain, like the Rain Man. Idiot savants that like a human calculator, but they have no social skills or have these other problems. Myself, I think I have like a combination of complex post-traumatic disorder and Tourette's, which is where you have like an exaggerated sense of justice. If you see something and think it's an injustice, you just get very passionate about it. You either get violently angry, or you just like there's no check on the emotions there, at least for a minute or two, or whenever. Like if I get startled by something, it's just what that's right. I go into, like, it's a fight or flight. I go into, first I'm scared, but then I realize, hey, it's too late to run because, I just heard the gunshot, or I just had the car crash. So it's too late to, it's too late to even say a prayer, like there was no warning or whatever. So if something startles me, a sudden noise behind me, or if I bump into something and it hurts me, I'm just, God damn motherfucker, the foul language comes out all of a sudden. But that's also too a phenomenon of being alone all the time. So I don't really have these social graces that I used to have when I was more embedded into society. So I'm more kind of keep to myself a lot these days. And but so that's kind of what I think Tourette's is. It's sort of like a fight or flights, where you go from flight instantly into fight because it's too late to run. So like when I was a kid, I would run, and I would use that fear to help me run faster and to be more like, it was almost like I could see through the back of my head. I didn't have to turn around and look. I felt like I knew, like I could hear, and I could just tell, like if they're, say in football, I could tell they're closing in. I would just sort of kick into this higher gear somehow. It was like I was running for my life. Even though we're just playing, we're just playing football, right? I mean, it's not, there's really no real danger, but it was like I was a deer. I was just, that adrenaline would just kick into the next super level of, like I was taking performance enhancing drugs or something. I would just zoom, and they're like, dang, he's gone. And but a lot of the trauma too is just from being the only really not black but very dark brown person in an all white Catholic school, private school that was, and I was about the poorest kid there too, even though my father was what you'd call upper middle class as a university professor. All the other kids, was the doctors and the, really high powered people that own a car dealership or own the hospital, not just the doctor, but the owner of the hospital. So these were like really, truly wealthy people that I grew up with. And so that kind of made me feel like an outcast from day one. And sort of lost in a Roman wilderness of pain too. Um, but and then the trauma of seeing the, when you're a 5-year-old kid and you go in there and you see bloody statues that's like R-rated. So those of you don't know, that some of the Catholic churches, they still have the like idols of saints and whatever, carved statues. And the church I went to was fairly wealthy, so they had like really large, full size, lifelike, like think of like a wax museum. Okay, so this is what they had in there. And so seeing all this imagery was really like just put me into hell, kind of. It's R-rated stuff that a 5-year-old kid shouldn't be seeing. And then of course I had a really shitty cousin when I was a kid, took me to see, I think the movie is called Phantasm. Don't watch it. It's pretty gruesome, or from what I remember of it, it was terrifying at least. It was like these silver balls, these like silver balls of metal, like metal orbs flying, and knives would come out and it would just stick in his forehead, and blood gushing out and whatever. And really terrifying. The Exorcist. Can't remember the actress's name, Blair or something or whatever, but like her head spun around, and like that's not supposed to happen, and that would have killed her neck. So that just really, and a little kid again. This is, my siblings or whatever family, they shouldn't have taken me to see these sort of horrible things at such a young age. So that kind of messes a person up, I think. But also just real life, not just imagery and movies, which is, if I was older, I could make the distinction between that and reality, but I also had really traumatic things happen as a kid. So all those kind of things combined really, I think, caused that complex post-traumatic disorder. And, problems later on with my relationships with my wife, or even getting a girlfriend. Like, I didn't even have my first girlfriend until I was 18. And married her, and she's really the only girlfriend I've ever had. Only woman I've ever been with. I've tried, but just never even really made it past the first date on any of them. And but that's just I'm just trying to describe what the issues there are with why I am the way I am as far as my emotions and what it is that maybe makes people think I'm pretty weird, but certainly not normal. I've never been a conformist to society, because after, like somewhere around third grade, I just kind of decided that I really became a true atheist. I just said, this is not logical. I was sort of like a fan of Star Trek, and I wanted to be like Spock. I want to be like these irrational humans with all their suffering and emotions and ups and downs. I want to be level-headed and logical, and also to stay out of trouble. Got so much trouble for anything, quite often for what other people did. Just totally innocent, and just was a scapegoat. I think the reason I went down this little rabbit hole was because I was thinking about this girl named Karen. Like, I later ended up working for her parents, became one of my best customers and really good friends too. Like, I think even now, if I could just look them up or go see her parents, they would just be, we just pick right up where we left off. That's how old friends are where I live. You see somebody, it doesn't matter how long I hadn't seen them, but of course, assuming they're still alive and still living where they used to live, they'd probably be like, "Hey, there's Sunsaver, man. I need you to fix this or whatever." I remember he called me one time. Uh, he's like, "I got a new VCR, and I need you to come program it. Saints game's coming on, and at 6 o'clock, and we got to see it." And it was after hours. Like, I just got off at 4 o'clock, and I said, "Well, it's a flat $60 service call." Jim, his name was Jim, and I was like, "Jim, it's a flat $60 service call. No matter how long it takes or whatever, half a day, up to half a day. I used to charge 60 or 120 a day for just these little odd job stuff." And anyways, he was like, "Yeah, come on." And it literally just took me 5 seconds, 5 minutes maybe, and plug the stuff in, get the remote, and I showed him how to use the remote, and got his stereo system hooked in. He had really nice, like, subwoofers and all this, but, it's all their color-coded cables with the, so anyhow, I miss that guy, but his daughter, I remember, just got attacked by this bully. She wasn't doing, like, I just like saw it just in time to see him push her to the ground, and of course she hit hard on her butt, and I sort of flashed back to when I was 3 years old and fell out of the attic and had my life flash before my eyes, and just sort of like crashed into hell, so to speak. Was just like, how did this happen? Like, I was like, there is no God. There's no justice anywhere. It's every man, woman, child for himself. No good and loving God would allow such cruelty and injustices to exist in this world. And so I just sort of became a total, complete atheist. But as far as getting, and also it was like the sense of like, how did I get here? Like, I didn't ask to be put here. This is actually something I hear a lot these days, that, "Oh, we chose our parents and all this from a previous life." No, my parents were good, don't get me wrong. They were good people, and they did a fairly good job of taking care of me and raising me. But I don't think they particularly wanted me. Nobody ever really wanted me, Kind of born late, a happy accident, my dad said, but I wasn't a planned. They didn't take a lot of pictures of me. They kind of ditched me and went to Niagara Falls, just like the movie Joe Dirt. Exactly like the movie Joe Dirt. Like, I am Joe Dirt. But delusions of grandeur. But So the bully pushes her down, and she lands hard on her butt, and I just sort of flash back to my own crash landing and how painful it was, and I just got violently upset about this injustice and ran over there and just whack on the chin, and he went down. And I jumped on top of him and just bam, 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 like left, right. I was about to knock his head clean off. I mean, I was out of control maybe, but at the same time, you know, I felt like I was just defending innocent. I guess I was already somewhat indoctrinated by television that, man's job is to protect innocent women and children or raise a family, whatever. And so if someone attacks your wife or your daughter or whatever, even or sister, even though she was just a fellow classmate and a much higher class, upper class person than I was, just sort of lower middle class boy. But it was just like an instinct that it just hit me, like I have to do something. And so anyways, somebody pulled me off of him, and boy, those Catholic nuns were so just, oh, you horrible, horrible, you're evil, you are inherently evil, and which I thought I was kind of doing the right thing. I thought I was being the hero, not being the evil one. Like, he's the bad guy that attacked the innocent girl. I'm the hero that saved her from getting further injury and was trying to teach him a lesson. Spare the rod, he spoiled the child, right? He deserved an ass whooping for what he did. Not because of who he was or what he was thinking. No, he actually did the crime. He injured the... So I felt I was innocent in that case. But no, you horrible, because you beat this other boy. Well, David, King David in the Bible slew Goliath, and he was the victor, and he was made the king. But in this case, the bad guy Goliath was slain, and instead of being the victor and being the king, I was punished. I was punished for punishing. So, anyways, I guess the point I'm making is that negative reinforcement for negative behavior just reinforces negative behavior. This is a principle in psychology. But, yeah, so Karen, her parents remember me fondly as being someone that was like family and was like a brother to their daughter. And whether they were aware of that incidents or not, I don't know. But they knew my parents too. Good friends with my dad. Was really loved by most of the entire community, as far as I could tell. Everywhere I went, I would run across people that, oh, I know your dad, or I took your dad's class. He was the best teacher. Of course, he taught criminal psych. He taught almost all of the police officers around. So quite often I'd get pulled over for doing something, and they'd be like, wait, oh, where are you? Sunsaver? Oh, I knew your dad, and so they would just, slow down, be more careful. Oh, ask your dad if I can come shoot pool next week or what. So that's sort of a little bit of a privilege there that I enjoyed, but I wasn't aware of it quite often. Was terrified of the police because I sort of identified with the black man, and again the inherent injustices and cruelty that I see quite often. So also that sort of led me to thinking about this Mandela effect. This is why I got so upset about this, all the misinformation. I call it misinformation because if I don't agree with it, and I feel like there's no supporting scientific evidence for something, there's no good historical facts for something, or if I see indications of deception, particularly in persons that have authority, like lawmakers. That's a position of authority. That's well, again, that's not so much authority as it is being the dictator. And so, if I see someone like that saying, obviously being deceptive, I get really upset. And but sometimes, someone might be deceptive because they're trying to protect you. This is something that took me a long time to learn, and I'm still sort of trying to come to grips with this idea that, sometimes people lie. Sometimes a good person, I should say. Sometimes a truly good person, of course we all have flaws, or we're all sinners, right? If you believe in the Christian philosophy. But sometimes a good person has to lie to protect someone else of some horrible truth that they don't need to know, or might not really want to know, or might regret finding, like, if you find a hole that's mysterious and you think it's fun, and you're digging down this hole and it's fun, all good in games, until you get to the bottom of the hole and a snake pops out and bites you. So don't get me started on my trip to Disney World. That was another time. That was like crashing and burning. That was like falling into hell at 3 years old, even though I was 20 something, close to 30 years old. When was that? 1995, I think. Went to Disney World. Anyways, it just caught me so off guard. It was unexpected, and it was information that I maybe needed to know, but didn't want to see what I saw, because it upended my reality, my virtual reality, I should say. I felt like there was a higher reality, and I've always sort of believed that there's these higher realities, maybe plural realities. They're not parallel, okay? They're not parallel realities. There's only one universe, but they're divergent. So this is like, going off at a right angle, or fractalating, whether or not these fractal, maybe they do end in places, even though it's infinite in a way. Like I'm trying to think of Mandelbrot sets, okay? You math people know about the Mandelbrot sets. You can just keep falling down a Mandelbrot hole and never see the same thing twice. But it can end if you turn your computer off and you get out of that Mandelbrot set, right? This is the advantage humans have over computers, is that we can kind of escape the virtual reality and get back to our own real reality from time to time. Don't have to fall down an infinite Mandelbrot set and never see the same thing twice. I can see the same thing twice. Like, let's say I got this old coin, in 1909 SVDB Lincoln head or something, Lincoln penny. Well, I can periodically get it out and look at it. It's in a protective case or whatever. For the numismatics, coin collectors out there, I'm somewhat of an expert in numismatics too. Although I don't collect coins anymore. Sold most of them off. Because I'm not planning to have children, so I don't have anybody to leave that stuff to. The treasure, the family treasure. I don't have a family, so no need for treasure. I just like solving puzzles and things. And I like sharing. This is what you would call fellowship. I like sharing. And so that's why I'm making this audio recording. Again, the deathbed confession kind of thing. So think of it like deathbed confessions. Because all this stuff is true. This is like, I'm not making up stories like this Corey Good guy or whatever. Secret space time travel thing or whatever. But then you push him on specifics and you're not going to get any names or get his facts wrong. Like, you get your facts wrong the third time in a row. 3 strikes, you're out, buddy. You don't know how to tell the truth to save your ass. people who have real information, though, they might sort of embellish it or leave out details. The devil's in the details. But when it pretty much corroborates with this other person, pretty much know that, well, we don't know the details on this or that, or, like, for example, we don't know the details of where the alien bodies are. So I don't know any details about where the alien bodies are, or what they look like, or any of this other stuff, but just I'm kind of assuming that's probably true. There probably are. Kind of hinting this and sort of drip feeding it, sort of what I call soft disclosure. Sort of kind of preparing humanity for the idea that, maybe there's other life out in the universe. Maybe we're not alone in the universe. Star Wars was kind of like my first introduction to other, the bar scene. That was one of my favorite ones. And then they do whips out the laser and cuts the guy's arm off. I was old enough then, though, to have a little bit. And also, it's not like human blood. It's like blue blood comes out. So not quite as graphic. And he was like a really bad guy, right? Like the bad guy that attacked my little friend Karen. So, I was older, too. I was like 8 years old when Star Wars came out in 1977. Blew my mind, but in a good way. Not like when I went to Disney World and had a snake flashed in my face. Not like the time I was telling in my last video about the girl who used to live up the street. I was interested in her and went over there. Well, what I didn't finish the point on that story was that she left the room. She had left the kids in the room alone. The Cartoon Network was on. And these cartoons were playing. And I was looking at the imagery in the cartoon, and it's 666 all over the wall. 666 here, 666 there. Pentagrams upside down, not a star, but not even a red star, but literally pentagrams, like you would see in a horror movie. Or there was one particular episode of Doctor Who, can't remember the name of the episode, where there was like it ended up being some sort of evil alien or time traveler that was doing this stuff, and it carved a pentagram in the skull and all that. And that was one of the best Doctor Who's ever. But so that's upsetting to see something like that, because then I'm thinking, man, I'm glad I don't have kids in this world. If that's the kind of stuff they're putting on TV these days. Like when I was a kid, we had Scooby-Doo, the planet I come from. I come from planet Earth, by the way, for you angels out there in the Galactic Council, whatever, the off-world commanders from Zeta Reticuli and whatever. But, so yeah, if anybody knows, some of them off-world commanders from Zeta Reticuli, I say, hey, we got a problem. Looks like we're having a problem here down on planet Earth right now. There's some bad stuff happening. So you go over and, try to talk to this young woman. Cause, like, I'm 54 now, but I think at the time I was 40-something. But, so this was several years ago, but she's leaving the kids there unattended. Well, I was left unattended, too. But I was left with Sesame Street, which was pretty cool. It had Big Bird, Oscar the grouchy trash can dude, Cookie Monster, cookies, oh, cookies, oh, love Cookie Monster, and Grover, Grover's so funny, so there wasn't never anything scary. That was good stuff. There, that was like my angels keeping me company. In the crib, little prison cell there that I was stuck in, and but kids these days, this is the kind of stuff they're seeing. I mean, I have to say something, but it's not going to win me any favors with anybody, and certainly not the executives that run Cartoon Network. But I would have to question them. Hey, I think what you're doing is kind of bad for America. Kind of bad for. I mean, I don't hate to get into politics, but I think that's kind of, that's kind of conspicuous. I think it's highly sus to be teaching kids, showing all this, demonic symbology. Who's doing that? Is this human technology too? That's another thing. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the world. Maybe Elon Musk is the smartest guy in the world. But hey, if Elon Musk, if you hear this, listen to this audio recording, find out what's the deal with the Cartoon Network showing all this demonic imagery. I did see a UFO blow up a Falcon 9 rocket on the launch pad. What was on that rocket? A Facebook satellite that was intended to go over the nation of Africa. Well, if you say it's the angels, not aliens but angels, well, apparently the angels don't really want Facebook educating the kids in Africa. So that tells me there's something highly conspicuous about Facebook itself. It's like, hey, the UFOs hate Facebook, and because they hadn't blown up any other Falcon 9 rockets on the launch pad like that. Only the one that had the Facebook satellite that was about to go up, Now, I know the Russians are going to say, oh, well, that's just an insurance scam or something like that. No, what I saw, I don't think any of my people have this kind of technology. I don't really believe the Air Force have this kind of technology, because of the thing sort of came in and hit it with a laser beam, went around, and then it flew up and out through the explosion without getting injured. Like if any of our craft goes through an explosion, it's going to get burnt or damaged or whatever. And then why would Elon Musk or the U.S. Air Force blow up their own rocket? That makes no sense to me. This was an angel or some sort of alien being or higher dimensional being that blew up that Falcon 9 rocket. But it blew it up for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. So anyways, well, I just kind of got off onto that tangent because this whole topic's been in the news a lot with the UAPs, and I'm sure most of these maybe are just harmless sort of space jellyfish or whatever. Like if you go down in the very deep oceans, you see all sorts of swirling lights and rings and these look like Christmas trees and blinking blobs because it's so dark down there. They use light for bait or to see or for mating purposes. A lot of the stuff people are seeing. Hey man, let those UFOs have sex, man. Give them some privacy. Come on, peeping toms. They're just here to mate or whatever, and then they're gonna go back down in the ocean. They might even live here. They might be millions of years old, been here for millions of years, Harmless. I think most of these things are just totally harmless, like jellyfish or whatever. They might not even be very intelligent, maybe precognizant or whatever. Not precognition. That's what I have, Get visions of the future that come true. But that's quantum mechanics. That gets off into quantum mechanics. So I was talking about the divergent timelines, that quantum entanglement. That's the only explanation I have for like the deja vu thing. But the Mandela effect is what I was kind of going with this. Talking about the racism I experienced as a child. The racism that quite often gets promoted on Facebook. Well, who's promoting that too? That's another reason. All this sort of culminated here recently with the invasion of Ukraine. Surprise, surprise. When have we seen this kind of thing before? In the 1930s? just prior to World War II, or before that, just prior to World War One. It seems like this sort of racism thing. And then I hear about all these different races, the reptilians and the Nordics and the this and the that. Well, that kind of pisses me off. I mean, I kind of, it's like, hey, this. Not that I own the world. Like, I'm not king of the world. I'm not Leonardo DiCaprio, right? I don't own this planet, so I'm not king of America. We don't have kings in America, by the way. But it kind of, irks me to think that just I'm a human, though, see? So I'm part of a species of animal on this planet, the human race, the human species. So the idea that there's like these little dudes from other planets coming here and manipulating our DNA and then pitting us against each other to fight. This is like the Romans, throwing the saints in there to battle lions or whatever just for their kinky pleasure or their Machiavellian desires to, peeping Tom on us, Had a peeping Tom when I was about 13 years old. About 2 a.m. I was watching Night Flight on TNT or something on Cablevision in the early 80s. And I heard some shuffling in the bushes. I thought, man, that sounds like a big animal. That's got to be a dude. And then I'd heard about, hey, there's some, homosexual child molester lives on the next street or something. And he'd been arrested and was released. And of course, my dad, being that he trained the cops, he knew, he'd heard through back channels that, hey, there's a freak living around the corner from you. So I was like, man, but I didn't think that. I just kind of, I don't know, I was just bold. I said, I'm going to go, And I had been studying karate and all this and was really good at football. And I just kind of assumed, hey, I'm going to go catch this guy and bust his ass. So I go run out the back door, and I hear him run out. Couldn't see, though. It was pitch black. He runs out of the bushes and takes off down the driveway, and he's outrunning me. And I was a really fast runner at age 13, 14. So this means it was a full-grown man. And then when I backed off and I realized I was maybe in more danger than I thought. Because if I'd have caught him, then what? He sounded like maybe a grown man. And I was only 13, 14, so if I had actually caught him, it may have been a much worse situation. But he never came around again, whoever it was, because it scared the hell out of him when I just busted him like that. I overheard him kind of sneaking around out in the bushes. The point I'm getting at is, peeping Tom shit, that's not cool. Eavesdropping on U.S. citizens, that's not cool. You don't really need to be doing that. You need to be eavesdropping on aliens or basically like foreign agents that are trying to interfere with our politics or trying to spy and steal our best technology or trying to suppress our best technology or murder our best inventors to keep things out of the news, like the Stanley Meyer, the water-burning car guy, Who murdered him? Come on, people, what's wrong with you? Young kids today, Chad Smith podcast and all you Joe Rogan, why don't you get on top of that kind of stuff and get off of these other conspiracy theories like who shot JFK or whatever, or even the alien stuff. Well, the average person doesn't have a need to know anything about aliens. The average person's got more important things to do, like earn a living or get home in time. Their wife won't be pissed off at them, or the average person's got more important things to do. But they need to be, like our scientists and our university people need to be aware that they're falling way behind on this technology. If they don't understand that there's more energy in water than there is in gasoline, they don't understand that burning gasoline is causing global warming and it's killing the planet. And they need to know this. They need to understand that the global warming is real. You know, kids today, I try to talk to them, you ask them anything about it, oh, that's just a scam. But they're being taught literally in the school that it's a scam. There's no such thing as global warming, or it's just natural Miloshevich cycles or whatever. Well, you know, a lot of it may be natural cycles. You know, maybe comets hit. But think about this. Maybe it's a cycle because if you look at it, it doesn't really have, it's not a sine wave. If it was something orbital, it would have a sort of a predictable pattern if it was something to do with the orbit of the planet, or even just a tilting on the axis. It should have a predictable pattern. But when you look at the ice core samples, the correlation between CO2 levels and periods of global warming and global cooling, these are ice ages, there's really not a whole lot of predictable pattern. So this means, you know, yes, it could be comets. So a comet hits in the ocean somewhere, all this water goes in the stratosphere, now it's just clouds everywhere, the planet cools down because it blocks the sunlight, snow falls, now the clouds clear, but the whole planet, all the land at least, is covered in snow, which is white, which reflects the sunlight. So the planet continues to cool even though all the clouds are gone. And it might be 10, 20,000 years before it starts to warm up again, or something causes it to warm up again. But another possibility is this. Herbivores overpopulate, like dinosaurs or humans. Humans overpopulate. They cut down all the trees. Well, trees absorb carbon dioxide. Now, with no trees to absorb the carbon dioxide, anytime a volcano goes off or people start burning coal or oil, the CO2 levels start to rise. The planet gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Okay? So what triggers the next ice age, though? Well, the planet gets hotter and hotter. It's a feedback loop. So all this heat that's inside the planet now, it has to escape to outer space to reach equilibrium. All the volcanoes go off. Now you got all this ash in the stratosphere. The ash in the stratosphere reflects the sunlight. What happens? Global cooling. It's like a nuclear winter. And so then he triggers an ice age. So global warming could actually trigger an ice age. All the volcanoes go off. All this ash and particulates are in the stratosphere. Now, boom, you know, day after tomorrow. Shuts down the thermohaline cycles is another thing. Fresh water melts, goes down the ocean, and stops the ocean currents. And now the warm water can't get up to the polar regions. Polar regions freeze over. Now you have another feedback cycle loop where this cold, you know, the snow builds and builds, and it gets further and further south, and it reflects more and more sunlight. And then now it just triggers an ice age simply by deforestation alone. So might consider, you know, stop cutting down the trees. Like, I think that's what the ETs or UAP supposedly said on many different close encounters. Stop the deforestation, because that's your carbon sink. That's one of your biggest carbon sinks, to sort of protect the planet, continuously protect the planet. It naturally regulate the temperature. Of course, you know, maybe humans could regulate the planet temperatures on their own, but use some common sense, like spraying a bunch of junk in the sky. More pollution is not going to help solve the problem of pollution. So, but maybe genetically modified seaweed. So maybe you had genetically modified seaweed that would, like, when the temperatures are too hot in the ocean, what happens is the gene is triggered in the seaweed, so the seaweed turns white. And now the white seaweed, you know, it's still perfectly fine. It's just like skin color, right? Like the way human DNA was maybe modified by these sort of higher beings or whatever, or angels, whatever you want to call them, ETs, or UTs, you know, maybe ultra-terrestrials that have been living here somewhere in secret caverns, the hollow earth maybe. Who knows? I haven't really been down there, so I don't know if it's hollow or not. I don't think it is. I think these are just, people from other planets. But so, anyways, you could genetically modify the seaweed, and then so now it turns white and reflects the sunlight. Then, oh hey, it starts getting too cold. We need to absorb more heat. So then, when it gets to a certain trigger level, like 75, wherever you got your thermostat set, let's say the thermostat's set at 75 degrees, and hey, it's getting too cold, drops down below 75, that triggers the chromosome or whatever, RNA or whatever that's in the genetically modified seaweed, and now it turns black or really dark green or orange or whatever, some color, purple, that's going to absorb sunlight from our star, the sun, and then now it's going to sort of start warming the oceans, or plankton or whatever, do it with plant life. But also theoretically, this would be habitat for wildlife, and it might sort of help moderate heavy metals and radiation contamination that's in the ocean already. So sort of be like a sink or trap for the heavy metals and poisons that we used to use. Hopefully in the future we'll can do a better job of containing all this pollution and radiation, or recycle it or reprocess it, like all this nuclear waste. That could be reused for something. It can be, for one thing, it can be transmutated. It can be converted into useful batteries and electronic products, batteries for spacecraft. I know somebody's planning to do a spacecraft to go to Venus and check out what sort of life might be on Venus. But it's just an idea, just a suggestion, that instead of like spraying junk in the sky to try to, or the chemtrails or whatever, don't want to get off into conspiracy theories that's going to be politically incorrect. But apparently somebody tried that out, and it didn't really, kind of backfire maybe. Just started causing it rain a lot. But hey, while we're on the topic of the climate, let's talk about the storms getting more severe. Well, the only reason they're getting more severe is, in my opinion, is because the atmosphere is getting thicker and it's getting denser. Is because we're just converting the Earth's crust into air pollution, and it's not going at escape velocity, so it just sort of goes to the stratosphere, pancakes, and just sort of gets thicker and thicker. But I'm tired of being a pessimist, and I'm tired of all this defeatist attitudes that people have. I've had. I've been very negative. I know. I apologize for that. Even on the UFO topic, I was very skeptical a lot. I'm mostly just sort of like, I don't know, I guess I was monster hunting. Like, I'm looking for the boogeyman. Who's covering up this or that, or who's lying about this or that, or who's spreading misinformation. And so, I was kind of hard on some people that are public figures. And again, sometimes these people, if you're put into a responsible position, you don't want to take your kid to go see this horrible X-rated or R-rated movie or gore and violence like Phantasm, or Scanners. You wouldn't want to take a little kid to go see this really terrifying horror movie, because it's gonna mess them up. It's gonna mess them up like Sunsaver got messed up. But and so that's why the cover-ups too. And I know a lot of skeptics are like, oh, the government can't cover it. They can't hide. They can't keep a secret to save their ass. Well, a lot of them can't, and I agree on that. But that's why I was calling out a lot of people like, hey, he's bluffing, or he's lying, or this or that. And so, I know I said something about Chris Mellon, which used to be like a security advisor guy. He was showing signs of deception about the element 115 or lawrencium, or is it called moscovium, or like this element 115 had like 3 names, and I was like, well, that's strange. Even Wikipedia can't seem to Wikipedia is pretty fairly trusted open source data. And like I'm searching my computer and I'm searching my own physics textbooks too. I got a pretty good little library here of physics textbooks, hardback books. Not digital, old school stuff, kind of books that the Nazis used to burn. But so I was pretty hard on him, but no, it's John Ramirez. John Ramirez he's ex CIA, and I know I've been kind of hard on some of the CIA, but again, some of them, you know, maybe the general public doesn't need to know this. I was bitching about, man, my channel hasn't been promoted. I apologize about that too. I don't want to promote my channel to anybody that doesn't like. It's not made for children, and I don't need to promote this to anybody that doesn't want to hear it or that isn't interested in just stories of me being a raconteur. The tall tales. I like that kind of thing, and that's why sort of leading up to talking about John Lear. This was the son of the man that invented the Learjet, owned Learjet company or whatever. I think he was ex-CIA too, but I really regret that John Lear died before I might have a chance to meet him or raise the money to go out and see him at some Contact in the Desert thing or something, because I would have loved to have met John Lear just to hear the story. Again, not about the UFOs and done. I mean, I've seen enough of that. I don't need to know any more about the UFOs. Let them buggers do whatever they got to do. They probably just hungry trying to find food, or they just horny trying to have sex. Do it in Las Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So. But no, I wanted to talk to John Lear because I would like to just sort of hear his stories. What was it like growing up as a kid in a Lear family, or what sort of secret ops? I won't tell anybody, I promise. I'll take it to the grave. It's just you and me here. It's like we're gonna check this hotel room for bugs and and so you can tell me in confidence. But so that's like a lost opportunity. That's an unfunded opportunity right there. I would have loved to have met John Lear and hear what sort of tales and things he's seen, or things that he may have been involved with. Black ops or false flags or psyops or whatever. We know these things are probably happening. For good reasons. So like I'm not into the fear mongering. I hate the fear mongering people that like we're not supposed to be afraid of our government, and we don't work for our government either. This is another thing. People pushing this authoritarianism crap. The government's supposed to work for you. You don't. You can get a job for the government if you want to, but it's not this monolithic thing. It's not like, it's not supposed to be a monolithic thing anyways. It's supposed to be government by the people, for the people. And, that's when I got off into, talking about my great uncle Thomas Jefferson. Writing, he was a long-winded, sort of wordy type too. I guess it just runs in the family, huh? But, all men and women, today I would say, all men and women are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with, certain inalienable rights. This means aliens don't have the right to come here and screw with my DNA and then put me in a circus ring to duke it out with other clowns on the Capitol lawn, stuff like that, This is why I say that some of the UAP may be a threat to national security and to humanity as a whole, a threat to the planet. But I'm not trying to be an alarmist, just maybe raise the military budget a little bit. If you're Democrat or Republican, if you're conservative or you're liberal, this should be a bipartisan issue of sort of, let's get the conversation started before that, like Lou Elizondo said, before that drawer of vegetables rots. Let's get this conversation started, okay? But I'm not. I'm just like a fanboy of John Lear, though. And again, not so much about the aliens, just because who he was. He's like this son of a famous Air Force. I've always been into aircraft. That was like the second thing I wanted. The first thing was I wanted to be a builder. I wanted to like just build things, houses, whatever. And then I saw Blue Angels show when I was like 4 or 5, and like now I want to be a pilot. I want to build my own airplane. I got a cardboard box and I put a propeller on the front, and I started cramming wires and parts in the front of the cardboard box like it was an engine, and just imagining, pretend. Kids make believe and pretend and stuff. So like pretending like I'm gonna build an airplane of my own. Well, these days, maybe I could build an airplane of my own. Elon Musk is building his own electric cars and whatever, and what was his name? That Bob Lazar guy built his own rocket bike. Howard Hughes was a dude that a long time ago that built his own giant, spruce goose aircraft. So as a 5-year-old kid, I wanted to build airplanes, and I remember my aunt came and stayed. May she rest in peace too. I miss her so badly. But my aunt came and stayed one summer, when my parents were just gone a lot. They were both professional people. Dad a professor teaching criminal psych, mom a teacher teaching Spanish at some other school. And so I was there a lot that summer, or that year, with my aunt anyways, and I was at it again. This time I was using wood and swinging a hammer like I'd been swinging a hammer since I was 3 years old. And I'm building this airplane. I'm putting wings on there, and I'm thinking, well, if nothing else, it'll glide maybe, and which I was just lying to myself. It was too heavy, and it was never going to fly. But I was convinced that, hey, if I just have enough faith, use the force, Luke. Trust your feelings. And I was like, I'm going to build. And I sat down, and what are you doing? I'm building an airplane. She nodded, and she listened, and she took me seriously. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is the first adult in my life that has ever just like paid attention to me, and respected me, and believed me. Apparently believed what I was saying. And that did wonders for my soul. That convinced me, hey, maybe I got a chance of, maybe I'm not in hell after all. Maybe that time when I fell out of the attic and sort of had my life flash before my eyes, I was like, well, this is it. I'm dying. I'm falling to hell. I'm sorry. I was just trying to, it happened in just like a half a second between falling from up here to hitting the ground. But on the way down, my whole short little 3 years of life flashed before my eyes. And I was like, if I live through this, I'm going to remember this lesson. And I'm going to remember everything that happens to me from now on, so that I don't make the same mistake twice. And so that's how I developed this sort of weird eidetic memory or whatever. Sort of a photographic memory. It's not quite the same as Mary Lou Henner. I can't call up the specific date and what day of the week it was and all this, and names. I've always been kind of bad with names and spelling. I never learned how to spell. But if you ask me what happened, I can close my eyes and I can say about what time of year it was, about what season. I can tell you about what time, even maybe, it was maybe the middle of the week, or it was on a weekend, But then the details, very photographic. Well, it was a blue car. The license plate was 537B29 or whatever. He was wearing a blue shirt, this, that. He had a red cap on, and he had a scar over his cheek, and or whatever. I'm making up stuff now. I mean, I'm not actually recalling. I'm just sort of giving an example of how I can recall these memories, and it's almost like I just can go into the scene and look at it in 3D and really examine things. It's a really weird sort of ability that I have with this eidetic memory. But it's not for everything. It's only for traumatic events, or like falling out of the attic, or a major event happens, my life flashes before my eyes, or something shocking, like seeing that kid sitting in a room alone with 666 and pentagrams and all this being flashed before his eyes. He's being brainwashed, programmed with demonic symbology. How's that happening? I mean, somebody call what do they call it? Child Protective Services, CPS, Child Protective Services, on Cartoon Network. Not on her. She maybe didn't even know that was happening when she wasn't in the room. But I saw it, and I saw Cartoon Network on the bottom of the TV screen there. Whistleblower. I'm blowing the whistle on this media. And Facebook, stuff I see on Facebook. You write a really good, you think, hey, I'm thinking this is artistic, it's shared values, it's nothing bad in here, nothing controversial, it sort of agrees with scripture and agrees with science. There's no conflict between science and scripture of any sort. You pick a religion, and then you tell me this, and I'll tell you the science behind that and how there's no conflict at all. But there's certain groups of individuals that may or may not be actual humans. Like John Lear's a human, or George Knapp's a real human. Jim Goodall, I believe, is a real human. These are people I'm sort of a fanboy of. Not a stalker. I mean, I wouldn't stalk anybody. That'd get you in big trouble. But I've been seeing them on TV since the early '90s, and they're just. I know that they have really interesting stories to tell, but I'd say out of those three, well, John Lear probably would have had some of the best stories to hear, and Jim Goodall. Well, George Knapp might have some really interesting stuff, but I'm not really into all that crime and corruption and monster hunting, real monsters, human monsters. But the only monsters I'm interested in is them little 3-foot gray ones that abduct children and torture them and extract their body fluids and do sort of Nazi shit from time to time. The other species out there, I'm sure they're perfectly good. And I know I made a lot of snarky remarks about the reptilians and all this. And, well, maybe they might not be bad. Maybe these might be the good ones. And the Nordics, I made a lot of asinine remarks about the Nordics. But they might not be bad. This might be the really good ones, the tall, beautiful blondes. Who was that, George Adamski a long time ago that supposedly had seen these Nordics? I don't know. I mean, it's just speculation to me because I don't have access to any. I mean, I'm sure people could do a freedom of information request if they wanted to, but I haven't actually seen anything like that. I've never seen any what you'd call good aliens or whatever, but I'm not saying they don't exist. They probably do. But then when someone like Mick West comes on, I'm sorry, I can't really apologize to Mick West. Because when I see somebody come on that's just deliberately ignoring the evidence of their own eyes, I find that highly sus. That's very conspicuous, as Johnny would say. Something ain't right with that. Something ain't right with that sucker there. He's saying that. He's saying swamp gas and weather balloon. That ain't no weather balloon we seen, John boy. Yeah, I know, Johnny. Weather balloons don't make right angles at Mach 20. Anyways, well, we just went over an hour. I was gonna really just do an hour, sort of rambling, telling stories of my childhood and adulthood and things I've seen that are very disturbing to my Tourette's syndrome that just make me get violently angry. Not violently angry, but just really pissed off, though, about seeing, a kid being brainwashed with demonic stuff, or seeing people on Facebook being pushed full of really racist bullshit that's couldn't stand up to a fact check if it needed to save their own neck. But also, one of the key reasons I made this video, though, I did want to apologize to this John Ramirez, ex-CIA, the things he says. These all sound like pretty good, I think I said something about, if people do look for a father figure or authority figure, or someone they could admire, like Carl Sagan is one of my heroes. I would consider like a father figure, or Leonard Susskind. I sort of see him as like a father figure that I really admire, and so I wouldn't want anybody to say anything bad about him, So anyways, I said something about, well, and then, yeah, who would want these sorry ass child molesters to be their parents, talking about the altered DNA. And, but I mean, that kind of made it sound like I was ridiculing him personally, and instead of the aliens, or saying that he's being deceptive or anything. And I really have not seen any indication of deception with John Ramirez. So in other words, either he's telling the truth, or he believes that what he's saying is basically the truth. And so, check out John Ramirez stories, the things he has to tell, and totally disregard all that skepticism that I had put back a while back on. I don't know if it was in a video or something I said in a chat room or something, but I do have a bad habit of just flying off the cuff with something like that, because I do have somewhat of a bad taste in my mouth with regard to the little gray aliens. But there's probably just all kind of species. I mean, look at just go into a dang rainforest and see how much diversity of life and how many species there are, or even just in the human population. There's so many different colors of skin and sizes and heights of people. There's a great diversity of humanity alone. So even within the sort of humanoids or whatever, there could be a lot of different. There could be some good ones, of the humanoids ones. But there's also a lot of just flying ones that they're not saucers, and they just look like jellyfish to me. So check out deep sea imagery of luminous, unidentified luminous jellyfish in the deep ocean. Well, what do they have in common? Well, outer space is black too. It's very black, dark. Now, don't get on about the conspiracies about the stars and why they didn't see the stars. And well, the reason is because they're washed out. The sun is so bright it overpowers. But now, if you go on to the other side of the moon meaning the side that's not facing the Earth. So when the sun isn't shining and you're totally on the dark side of the moon, you're going to see every single star around, and probably a lot of other things moving around too. But in the daytime, our atmosphere diffuses the light and absorbs the blue spectrum, and so the sky looks blue because of this. But when you're in orbit and the sun is here, or the moon is there, or you're on the bright side of the moon, and you got the Earth in the nights, or you got the Earth in the daytime sky. Somebody asked me a question, or not me, but I heard someone online in a video asking a question about, well, what about the moon? How can we see the moon during the daytime when the sun is out? Just couldn't wrap his head around it. Well, that's just about the orbital mechanics, because when you're on the moon, you see the same kind of thing. You got the sun over there, and there's certain times of the month that you'll be able to see the moon rising or in the sky along with the sun. I mean, you'll be able to see the planet Earth in the sky along with the sun if you're on the moon. And certain times of the month when you're on the Earth, you can see the moon and the sun in the sky together. It's just because of where they are. The sun is shining on both of us. See? But when the moon is up during the nighttime, in other words, the orbit seems to go, that when the orbit puts the moon in position over during the daytime, then you just see the moon. And of course the shadow, this is all well understood. It's not some conspiracy theory. So you young people out there that are just now getting into this kind of stuff, you have a little bit of skepticism, ask an adult. Because I don't know where all this misinformation is coming from. I figure it's probably coming from Russia or China. They want you to be confused. They want you to question the government. They want you to question your parents. They want you to question your reality so that you'll be easy to control, brainwash, or take over in a violent military overthrow. We don't want this to happen. We don't want a violent military overthrow in the United States. I'm kind of happy where I live, and this is my house, and I don't want any little green men from Russia in my house. So, little green soldiers from Russia march into my house and tell me what to do. Or China. Now, I'm not trying to be racist against Chinese people. I'm sure there's a lot of really good Chinese Americans and Japanese Americans that were born here and just as patriotic as I am. Like John Ramirez. So, this is, again, this is the main one I can think of at the moment that I need to apologize to. But you folks out there spreading these sort of misinformation and flat earth stuff, knock it off. That ain't cool, and it's pissing me off. So, but, alright, well, I guess that's it for this talk. Going over quite a bit. Sort of getting tired and running out of things to talk about here. But I guess that's the main points I wanted to get across to both my friends and my enemies out there in the world. And, my friends I might have up there in heaven, the heavens above, or outer space, the cosmos. Thanks for listening.